like to call to order the Hatfield Township Board of Commissioners regular meeting for September 22, 2021. Roll call.
President Zipfel.
Here.
Vice President Rogers.
Here.
Commissioner Andrus.
Here.
Commissioner Lees.
Here.
Zimmerman.
Well, I would like, I'm surprising him a little bit, but since we're honoring him, Logan, if you can stay right there. If you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, all you need to do is stand and start, and we all follow you. But Logan Mchenry is going to be honored this evening as an Eagle Scout, and if you'd lead us in the pledge. Forgot to tell you that part when we just were talking a moment ago, but don't worry. I figured it was something that you knew well. All right, so before we get to the fun part of the evening, which is to honor Logan, we have a couple of items on our agenda we need to do. First is approval of tonight's agenda. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Lees.
Second.
Second by Vice President Rogers. All in favor of approving tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we can move ahead with the agenda that is before you. All right, consent items. Is there a motion to move the consent items into the record? So moved. Motion by Commissioner Andrus.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lees. Those consent items include the Board of Commissioners regular meeting minutes of August 25, the Board of Commissioners workshop meeting minutes of September 8, the Treasurer's report for the month of September, and the bills payable, paid bills in the amount of $197,381.73, and unpaid bills in the amount of $421,628.51. With that, I will call the question. All in favor of moving those into the record, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is moved into the record. All right, citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments on agenda items? Right, then we have a very special recognition tonight. I'm going to hand the ball off to Commissioner Andrus. This is the recognition of Logan Mchenry for his Eagle Scout project in School Road Park. So if you and your family, Logan, would join me and Commissioner Andrus over at the podium.
So I don't have anything scripted, and it's really about Logan. And I've known Logan and his family for a long time. In fact, it was I think Haley was playing soccer or softball or something of that nature, and I always teased Logan, had bantered back and forth with him, and he was a very good sport about it. So I'm not so sure I would do that now because he's perhaps a little bit bigger than I am. So it was quite an honor. Logan reached out, and I was more than happy to volunteer to help him finish his Eagle Scout project. And I thought, it's not every day that you hear of kids, I should say youth or young men, pursue an Eagle Scout award. And I think it's a wonderful thing that there's a group of parent leaders, Ken specifically, and moms and dads who support their children in these activities. And I can tell you that I had a great time helping Logan and his team put that bike repair station up. And he had I think it was 3 or 4 guys with us, Logan? Yeah. A couple guys, and they were very nice young men, very ambitious, all doing well in their chosen path of careers and schooling. And so I very much appreciate you asking me, and I had a great time doing it. And I want to wish you best of luck in the future. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Proclamation.
Okay. So I get the formal part, which bestows upon you our thanks. And there's a proclamation that we have here that is signed by me, Commissioner Andrus, and the Township Manager. And it reads as follows. Proclamation. Whereas the Hatfield Township Board of Commissioners desire to recognize Hatfield resident Logan Mchenry, whereas Logan Mchenry chose to focus on helping his local community when deciding his Eagle Scout service project, and whereas Logan Mchenry designed and constructed a bike maintenance stand in School Road Park, whereas Logan's bike stand has been a great addition to the township's park and trail system and will be utilized by cyclists for many years to come. You've had an impact that's going to last for many, many years. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, in accordance with the foregoing, that the Board of Commissioners of Hatfield Township do hereby endorse this proclamation as recognition of Logan Mchenry for his accomplishment of earning an Eagle Scout rank and for making School Road Park and Hatfield Township better because of his efforts, proclaimed and presented this 22nd day of September 2021. Congratulations, and thank you very much for your contribution to the township.
And you're more than welcome to come up.
Well, one last thing, I want to say one more thank you, and that's to Becky, who has been a longtime pool advisory board member. And so we needed to recognize her and embarrass her a little bit by pointing that out. And we want to thank you for your contribution to the township as well. Obviously, it runs in the family, so thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Hey, Logan, look.
Yeah.
All right, thanks again, folks. Congratulations. All right, just a few action items tonight on our agenda. First is Resolution 21-27 with regard to the pension obligation for 2022. Is there a motion for approval?
Moved.
Motion by Vice President Rogers, second by Commissioner Andrus. Aaron, I think you have this one.
Andrews, were you wearing the appropriate safety gear for that picture?
Got safety glasses on. And what you, people in the audience may not realize is they're not allowed to use electrical tools, any powered tools. So that project wouldn't be able to be finished unless an adult was there, and I'm it's an adequate substitute for an adult.
Mr. President, yes, the pension obligations were discussed at length 2 weeks ago. The good news for the taxpayers of the township is that the pension obligations for 22 are 50% of what they were for 20 and 21. So based on some of the gains in the market over the last 2 years, the pension plans of both are funded at 100% for the first time in decades, if not more, here in Hatfield. And then therefore the obligation from the taxpayers 2022 is $600,000 instead of 1.2 million. So a huge reduction, and special thanks to Pension Committee, President Zipfel and Vice President Rogers, and Commissioner Andrus in the Finance Committee for guiding some decisions over the past 5 to 10 years that put us in this position. So good news for the employees who are on their way to earning some of these benefits, which is part of our total compensation plan for employees that do great work and hard work, and great news for the taxpayers. So a good agenda item without question.
Okay, that's great. So with that, I'll call the question, unless there's any questions or comments. Anyone? No, hearing none, then I'll call the question. All in favor of Resolution 21-27, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Second, is there a motion to advertise the ordinance with regard to the small cell wireless facilities zoning amendment?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Lees.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Andrus. Aaron, I know you have this one. We talked about this one at our last meeting.
I think I have this.
Oh, do you have it,
one.
Ken? I'm sorry.
Yep.
President.
Ken's going to walk through some suggestions for a proposed ordinance that I'll let Ken explain.
What we've done since we talked about this 2 weeks ago, this all came up fairly suddenly with a very short timeline from the
Right.
State Act. And since then, John was able to give me a copy of the act. We went carefully through the act to look at everything we were permitted to do and what controls we could have. We also took a look at some of the proposed legislation in other municipalities to get some sense of what other townships and boroughs were doing, and came up with a list of the requirements that we felt were most appropriate and would be most impactful for Hatfield Township, and also fit within the four square boundaries of the act. What you see on the screen is a list of those requirements, and I'll just sort of run through them quickly, just summarize. But the first would be a prohibition for these small cell facilities in rights-of-way where all utilities are underground. This would prevent a utility from coming in and putting a 50-foot pole in on a block that has all underground utilities.
That's a good one.
Not at all be appropriate in our residential areas. Secondly, we required that any new support structures for these small cell facilities have to be installed so that there's at least a 2-foot clearance from any sidewalk, trail, or path, and that there not be any obstruction whatsoever to vehicular or pedestrian traffic or obstruction to sight lines. Third, we said that there must be a style and design of the equipment that matches the support structure so that we don't wind up with the gaudy colors and clashing patterns and such, so that things will hopefully blend into the background as much as possible. Required that the placement would not impact light, air, or views from adjacent windows, so especially in residential areas, so that someone wouldn't look out their window at one of these facilities. I'm not sure if the commissioners or if the public is familiar with these, but there are a number of them in mostly in boroughs at this point. They haven't really begun to be installed in townships, but in denser areas there are quite a few of them, and you only see them if you're looking for them, because most municipalities do enact these kinds of regulations that would make them blend into the background as much as possible and not stand out and be obvious. We require that the accessory equipment be mounted at least 8 feet above grade so that there is no obstruction to pedestrian traffic. Generally, accessory boxes that are mounted on the support structure, and they're actually larger than the antennas themselves. So we want to ensure that those are raised up off the ground far enough that they're first of all not going to be tampered with or be an obvious target for graffiti, but also so they're not going to interfere with pedestrian traffic coming by. And then similarly, we're requiring that all the accessory equipment be contained within a single cabinet or shroud, so that there's not, on a support structure, there aren't 3 or 4 different groupings or packages of equipment, that all that accessory equipment has to be in one single area. We require that there not be any visible lighting unless it's required by state or federal law, so that there wouldn't flashing lights or equipment. And then we're also requiring, and this is language from the Act, to the extent technically feasible, that's language that we need to use. They can't locate support structures in the front facade of any residential structure. So in front of someone's house, they could not locate one of these support structures. They could not locate them within 10 feet of any driveway or on the right-of-way opposite any driveway, so they don't become hazard to backing in or backing out or pulling into their driveways. Those were the requirements that we could put in place under the act, and working with Kristen for the next couple days to put all of these into the form of a formal ordinance, which has to be circulated to the County Planning Commission by that point. Then it would be advertised, and it would be on your 27th?
20,
Aaron, is that correct? 27th meeting. Adopted on the 27th, which would be one day before the deadline that's set by Act of October 28th. And then at the bottom of this screen, you'll also see just a summary of the fees that we're permitted to collect. The Act sets specific fees that we can collect, and we can raise these over time as our expenses increase, but we have to start here. So for each facility, we can charge a $100 permit fee. For each pole or other support structure that's being placed, we can charge a $1,000 permit fee. And for every facility in the public right-of-way, we can charge $270 a year for a license. Those are the fees that we're permitted to charge, and we can put those in our fee resolution simultaneously with passage of the ordinance.
I have a couple of questions, Ken.
Sure.
They're all great additions, by the way. And then once the ordinance is drafted, we'll see the rest of it, of course, before we. Is there any limitation on the number of facilities that can be attached to something or put up within a particular area, say 50 feet, 100 feet? Meaning that could there be more than one of these units on a pole?
They're not permitted to have more than one on a pole, but Act provides for co-location so that the antennas can be used by more than one carrier. That's provided for in the Act itself.
Okay.
And a little bit like double talk. So you're only allowed to have one, but they're allowed to co-locate?
Well, it's more than one carrier on a support structure, but they would be sharing equipment or sharing the equipment area.
They would have the right under this ordinance to actually install a pole?
Yes.
As opposed to adjoining it to an existing pole?
Yes, the Act sets those requirements up and requires that if there's an existing pole, they must locate on that existing pole first.
Yep.
If there is no existing pole available, then they can put a new pole in. The new pole can't exceed 50 feet in height. Those are all stipulations in the Act itself.
That was going to be my next question, is if, for whatever reason, they decided that they wanted to have a different pole, they're not able to do it, they would have to attach it to an existing pole.
They would have to, if for some reason they can't attach it to an existing pole,
Right.
then they're permitted to put a new pole in that would not exceed 50 feet in height. But those are requirements of the Act itself.
Of the Act
that
itself,
we
yeah.
can't change.
And we don't, under the Act, we don't have the discretion to determine which poles they can go on?
No, we don't. We don't. They get permission from the utility company, from PICO or PPL,
Right.
to locate on one of their utility poles, then we can't.
They are required to seek permission of the utility that owns that pole then?
Yes.
I'm not sure who answers this question, but I know that we've had issues with the cable box installations where they might not be set properly. Do we really have any enforcement power over some of these regulations? If they don't go 8 feet and they go 6.5, can we make them move it? Or once it's installed, it's out of our...
Well, let me answer that. I mean, with the Crown Castle case, these facilities really got the standard of a utility now in the right-of-way. We're talking about the right-of-way. So if they do not do what they need to do, right-of-way, utility law, and if the facility needs to be repaired, we'd reach out to the respective carrier and they will fix it. But yeah, I think it's important to stress to the public, the Board of Commissioners are not imposing this. This is a state statute that basically said, across the state, you have to make sure your codes are cleaned up, because now, through that Crown Castle case, they are utilities. So they're treated just like any other utility. If there was a cable box that got turned over, you reach out to the provider, you notify them, and they would fix it.
That was more speaking to, and I like the ordinance or the stipulation of ground level, right? Because some of those boxes you see throughout the neighborhoods are pretty much in line of sight for a sedan, so you really can't see around. So if they were to install that box at 4 feet, we have the authority to force them to move it, or they can pretty much say, yeah, you know what, I don't feel like it, forget it, I'm not doing
We
it.
would be able to force them to move it because we are allowed by the act to regulate certain things. So the things we can regulate, we are regulating.
And enforce.
So that 8-foot limit is something that we would regulate as permitted by the act.
I would concur with that.
So if they install it 3 feet off the ground instead of 8 feet off the ground, under the terms of the permit that was issued to them.
Thank you.
So a couple of years ago, we bought our lights. We bought a lot of lights, street lights. Did we also buy the structures?
We did.
So do we have any say as to whether they can mount on those poles or not?
They're permitted to mount on poles within the right-of-way. So whether it's our pole or whether it's electric pole, they're permitted. But they have to then pay us
Yeah,
license fee.
I understand that part. I just thought I heard you say that they have to get permission from the utilities to mount onto their poles.
They would have, for the individual utilities, for any municipal pole,
Keep in mind too, Vice President, that we purchased all of the Pico ones, which was roughly 10% of all of them in the township. We're primarily PP&L, so we do own some, so that may come up.
I would just add, what we're doing here tonight really gives us that discretion. It's great. Ken's list is amazing. So this actually will allow us to enforce as much as we can. The act doesn't really give us a lot of flexibility, but with this list, it really gives us some discretion.
So to be clear, because they are now a utility, we can't stop them from doing this.
Correct.
Giving them permission to, have no control over it, other than we're trying to put some guidelines in that they have.
Correct.
That is correct.
That's
Okay.
exactly right. And that's what gives them the right to locate within the right-of-way.
Yeah, I know. I just was making sure it was clear to everybody.
If they weren't designated a public utility, they wouldn't be allowed in the right-of-way at all.
Right.
Yep.
And if I remember, Ken, the reason for the speed, just so for people's understanding, is that's not a timeline that we've set. That's a timeline that the state has set for passage of this, for adjustments that would apply to us, to the township.
That's correct. Anything that we want to do that isn't the boilerplate of the act itself, allowed to do under the act, but if we want it to be in effect at the same time that the act goes
Act
into
goes
effect, we have to do it by October 28th.
And then the last item on fees, these fees are set by the statute?
Yes.
At some point, the statute gets revised, or do we
Well,
have
there
the
is,
ability?
there's language in the statute that allows us to increase those fees as our costs
You
rise.
had mentioned that, right? Okay, so we'll be following the statute with regard to fees. All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Really good question, Tina. We don't know at this point. I suspect that we're not going to see very many of them in Hatfield Township, that most of the installations are in more densely populated areas. Right now, the technology isn't cost effective unless they can put one of these things in and serve a number of homes from it. And with our larger lots, wider lots, to put these in at a density that would give them enough customers is not cost effective for them. So I think unless the technology changes, I don't think we're going to see very many. I think you might see some in Hatfield Borough, you might see some in Lansdale. Doylestown already has quite a few.
And the city has a bunch.
Right, the city has a lot. But I don't really think we're going to see very many right off the bat here. As the technology changes and things get more efficient, then maybe. Don't know at this point how many we might see.
Question, Tina. Any other questions or comments?
Sure. Yep.
I'll answer that. That's very standard language throughout, legislation, so I feel confident that that would address any concerns.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, hearing none, and just be mindful, everyone, we're just voting on the motion to advertise the ordinance. This isn't voting on the ordinance itself. So with that, motion was made and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion to advertise the small cell wireless facility zoning amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Okay, action item number 3. Is there a motion for approval with regard to professional services agreement, building inspections, Keystone Municipal Services?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Lees. Second by Vice President Rogers. Aaron, this is a housekeeping item for best practices for professional services when they assist us in building inspections. Is that right?
Correct. This is entering an agreement with Keystone Municipal Service to provide building inspections throughout the township.
All right. Any questions or comments? None, I'll call the question. All in favor of that motion for approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Action item number 4, resolution number 21-28. Is there a motion for approval with regard to the law enforcement assistance grant reimbursement?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Lees. Second by Commissioner Andrus. Want to throw this over to Chief, just for fun?
He throws everything else away,
I thought I'd beat him to the punch, but
Go ahead, I'll pass it back to Aaron.
one of you, I would appreciate if you...
Commissioners, I think you'll remember in 2020, there was a lot of civil unrest in cities throughout the country after some events took place. And the police department in Hatfield, along with many other departments, were called to assist where a lot of those protests were happening, specifically here locally in Philadelphia and King of Prussia Mall, Montgomery Mall. Our police department went and assisted, and this is federal money coming back to the states, then back to the towns to reimburse for those costs. So Hatfield's getting roughly $14,000 from the federal government for the police effort in helping with some of those events in the summer of 2020.
Okay.
Exactly as I would have said it, so, thank you.
I appreciate, we all appreciate that, Chief. All right, with that, I'll call the question. All in favor of Resolution 21-28, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. And last, Tax Assessment Appeal 3015 at Advance Lane. Is there a motion for approval? Motion by Commissioner Andrus,
Second.
second by Vice President Rogers. Mr. Solicitor, I believe you have this one.
Yeah, we've been seeing these quite frequently now. This is a tax assessment appeal that resolves 3015 Advanced Lane. The school district filed an appeal about 2 years ago. There's 2 tax years at issue. These are the tax assessment stipulations we like. It's an increase of $8,563.28 of underpayment of taxes that would come to us. So I'm recommending that it gets approved. We just need a motion.
And for those of you who don't know, there's 3 parties that are part of these agreements, right? Us,
Yeah,
the
so
school
typically
district,
with the
and-
tax assessment appeal, you have the township, you have the school district who actually initiated the appeal,
Right.
the county office, and the property owner. In this case, the property owner was kind of silent, so the judge issued a directive to kind of resolve this matter. So for us tonight is a tax assessment stipulation where all 3 parties are in agreement.
Okay. All right, any questions, comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Okay, that's all the action items for the evening. Citizens' comments. Are there any citizens' comments? All right, hearing none, we have a brief meeting tonight. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Lees.
Second.
Second by Vice President Rogers. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thanks for coming out, folks.